Joel McLeod.
And I'm Roland Tanner.
And welcome back to another Thursday 905 Roundup. We are packing the stories in tonight, folks, so strap in, sit tight, enjoy. Roland, what are we starting off with?
We're starting off with a really pretty big announcement in Peel, but in one part of Peel about a really big expansion to Mississauga's hospital. The PCs have, just 6 months before an election, announced that they are going to invest something like $3 billion into the expansion, and which is, great news. Expanded hospitals when our population expanding is good. I mean, you can't argue that fact. The timing of the announcement is, shall we say, traditional, I think, in provincial politics. Again, can't really argue with that either necessarily. Why wouldn't you make these announcements when it's going to help you the most? The one kind of question is, which has been raised by the Pointer website, thepointer.com, for anybody who hasn't visited their excellent website on Peel News, is once again that Brampton seems to be getting treated like the poor relation. And while there has been a commitment of between $500 and $1 billion to Peel Memorial, which is, as they emphasise, not actually a hospital, but I guess it's like a sub-hospital, if you like, and they're adding 250 beds there, it's far short of what the region has been asking for, which is an expansion of about 850 beds in Brampton. So there is the question of why is Mississauga doing so well, and why is poor Brampton always the poor relation when it comes to investment in Peel?
Well, this is not a new story. This is something that's, if people remember back to the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, this was an issue. There was an issue that kept coming up. A lot of Peel politicians, most notably Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown, did say that they needed new facilities. They needed a massive upgrade of healthcare facilities to, at that time, was to handle what was pretty much the epicenter almost of COVID-19 in the province, if not possibly even in Canada. Side note, they have turned the tide on that big time, and we're hoping to cover that in a future episode. So definitely stay tuned and subscribe for that episode, folks. But for a long time, it was very much a kind of like, why is Brampton having a force to do without? And you and I were talking about this just off air. I think it comes down to strictly politics and personality. We were looking over the list of members, provincial MPPs for Brampton, and we noticed in Brampton, 5 seats are sitting. 3 of the 5 are held by the NDP, and the 2 Brampton seats held by the PCs are held, backbench MPPs. I wouldn't be able to pick them out of a lineup should they come up. And coupled with the fact that Patrick Brown and the Premier do not get along. They are very much adversarials. I mean, going back to when Patrick Brown was ousted as PC leader way back in the day, and Doug Ford took over. I think it comes down to basically personality and just old-fashioned politics. My bet is that Tories are writing off Brampton as a loss. If they keep those 2 seats, great, wonderful. But they're not counting on picking up the other 3. And if Doug Ford can thumb his nose at Patrick Brown for the next year, so be it. Who cares what the people of Brampton want?
It'd be nice to think that the politics wasn't this petty, and that the personal animosity between 2 rivals for the PC leadership at one time would affect the healthcare of however many hundred thousands of people live in Brampton. But I think even our knowledge of how Queen's Park works suggests that's exactly how politics works, and that personal animosities and rivalries are exactly the kind of reason why things don't get built, particularly amongst the more ambitious and cutthroat end of the political spectrum. But
it's absolutely brutal that the people of Brampton are literally caught in the middle between this bickering between Patrick Brown and Doug Ford, and that's just it's a sad state of the of affairs, especially like, again, we're coming out of a global pandemic. You think the idea of like, well, let's put all hands on deck and let's get let's shore up the ship, folks, and let's make sure it's tip top shape to handle whatever COVID's going to throw at us next. Instead, it's this, let's give all the money to Mississauga, because, and here's the other thing, the Mississauga MPPs, again, they're also the folks that I can tell you, I can tell what they've done. I can't tell of a single accomplishment that any of them have done in the legislature or any names that they've made for themselves. This is literally a token for them to help sell to the people. It's something that they can put on a pamphlet, and when they go knocking door to door come election time, they can say, "See, I voted for that."
It certainly was the case. I mean, well, you at one time worked for a minister, a Mississauga minister. There was the finance minister was from Mississauga. So it's strange that you have such a big city with which is in Mississauga's case, 100% PC right now. Or it used to be a liberal stronghold. It is now the strongest of PC strongholds. Right, the second should not produce a single MPP who's managed to make any kind of impact whatsoever.
What I'm amazed at is that
in 4 years,
is that they did not find a minister out of there. Mm-hmm. The Liberals, when in the McGuinty and Wynne governments, Mississauga was a treasure trove to find ministers out of there. That's you because you wanted to tell the people of the 905, yeah, you matter to us. We need people of consequence and people with weight behind their titles, sitting around the cabinet table making decisions. And I was always a little shocked that Doug Ford never went to Mississauga and said, "Well, I'm going to pick at least one. I'm going to find at least one."
Yeah, I mean, and Doug's from Etobicoke, right?
Yeah.
Unless I'm mistaken. Suddenly having a brain crack.
That's his writing. He's
like you can't find anybody with any kind of serious credentials who can be even a junior minister. Well, I mean, there are parliamentary assistants, and I mean, basically everybody in Parliament, everybody in the House gets some kind of job. There's a parliamentary assistant is basically the bottom thing on the bottom rung on the ladder.
But that's the thing, is that the Liberals beforehand, and even before the Liberals, you had when Ernie Eves and Mike Harris were in power, they went to Mississauga and they took some of their Mississauga MPPs and made them ministers. It was just you wanted to show to the 905, hey, you've got a seat at the table. And I'm a little bit amazed that the current Tory government is doing this in this blatant kind of let's throw a bone to the people of Mississauga. Let's give them a new hospital, which is, I mean, they've been fighting for that for years. I know that, and it's good. It's good that's coming. It is a good news story. But yeah, I think the fact that they didn't do something similar to to Brampton shows what a naked political play this is to shore up those Mississauga votes in the 905 for the Tory party. I don't know if it'll pay off or not. It may, but who knows?
I should mention that. So Khalid Rashid, Mississauga East Cooksville, is the Associate Minister of Digital Government, which is...
okay.
Yeah, right. And Nina Tangri from Mississauga Streetsville is the Associate Minister of Small Business and Red Tape Reduction. These are not ministries which come with budgets or... I think, was it the great TV show... was it In the Thick of It? I can't remember. Anyway, it was about Parliament in Britain. Anyway, people go and Google it. It was a comedy program, and the minister in that was the Minister for Joined Up Government, and it was kind of like, it's like he's a minister for nothing, basically. I shouldn't go so far to suggest that these are associate ministers of nothing very much, but draw your own conclusions. For a city with 6 MPPs, Mississauga has 6 MPPs.
Brampton has 5.
Conservative. Brampton has 5, 2 of whom are Conservative, and the other 3 are NDP. Again, draw your own conclusions about which cities in Ontario have got short shrift since 2018. There was certainly been that said in Hamilton, and it's been said in Brampton, two cities where the NDP are very strong. You can't prove these things, but you can certainly make 1 and 1 equal 2.
I think it's just a sad fact that especially coming out of the pandemic, right? When we heard that Brampton was such a massive front for the pandemic to shore that up, and then to kind of just say, no, we're not giving you anything. We're not going to fix that problem. We're not going to fill the gaps there. It's an incredible short-sightedness on part of the government, if I do say my honest opinion. I'm a little shocked that they just looked at it and said, no, we're not going to do that. And just for what comes across as just such pettiness, to kind of want to poke Mayor Brown in the eye. It's just I think that fact throws a pall over the great news for Mississauga that they're going to get this great expansion on their healthcare system. And good news for them, but it's just come on, like why are we doing this to ourselves?
If you're listening to today's episode and you're from Brampton or Mississauga and have any thoughts on this issue, which add information and your take on this, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
Shoot us an email, info@905er.ca. Let her rip, and if it's good, maybe we'll have you on the podcast to elaborate. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
But you know what? Why don't we take a break for now, Roland, and we'll come back with another juicy story for our listeners. Okay, and we're back. So we're going from politics in Peel to politics in Burlington, or the poor reporting on politics in Burlington. I guess I would say.
Yeah, I don't usually want to wade into calling out other people's reporting, but this felt very unfair. So there's a big story in Burlington about the local taxi company, Burlington Taxi, has recently collapsed, and we're probably going to have an episode on that. Almost certainly going to have an episode on that in the next few days. It is a big story. This is not really about that story. It's a sub-story of that story, in that the previous Burlington Council before 2018 made various comments about reforming the taxi bylaws in Burlington. And it was referred to, a future meeting of council. Well, then the election happened, and that future meeting of council never seemed to happen. So the accusation has been made that the city somehow dropped the ball. They just forgot about all this, and Burlington Taxi has been the victim. We won't get into the details of that. What we will get into the details today is just an article in the Burlington Gazette, which was basically calling for the firing of the city clerk, Kevin Ardoon, blaming him for this ball dropping. And I just thought that was really unfair, because Kevin Ardoon came in and wasn't employed by the city of Burlington until 2020. If any ball dropping was done, it had been dropped and was scuttling along the ground for 2 years before 2020. It was in the transition of councils between 2018 and 2019, and there was a change of city manager, and many other changes of staffing around that time, certainly. But I don't actually think it's the city clerk's job per se, or not the ultimately person responsible. I mean, it's not even clear to me that any ball was dropped. What happens with councils is that things get referred, and then they get delayed, and they get held up, and they get put off. And it's not so much that anybody's forgotten; it's just that something never gets to the top of the pile to be addressed. I don't know. I have no reason to believe one way or the other, but nor does anybody else. So to call for someone's firing when you don't even understand the basics of what someone's job responsibilities are, or who was in charge at a particular time, I think is really irresponsible. And funnily enough, if anybody's going to be pissed off at Kevin Ardoon, it might have been me, because of some. When I was involved in a committee a couple of years ago, it was associated with Kevin Ardoon's office. But I will defend him to the death on this issue because I just don't think that's fair.
Here's the thing: not only should Kevin Ardoon be kind of his job I think he should be safe in his job, mostly because he came in 2020, was hired. It's not even his job. He's the city clerk. The city manager is the one who would be responsible for conducting this review, going into the departments and saying, let's talk to the lawyers, the staff, what departments would be involved, whatever, da-da-da-da-da. The clerk's office deals primarily with the city council, and it works closely with the city manager, but the city manager is essentially like the CEO of, it is called the Corporation of the City of Burlington. It's a business. It's a corporation. The city manager is essentially the CEO of the city. Whoever was, here's the, you mentioned it before. We don't know what happened. Somewhere in 2018, when City Council said, let's review the taxi bylaws, they handed it over to the city clerk, who would have handed it over to the city manager and said, go review. Do what you have to do your review, write your report, and submit it back to the council so the council can either go with it or not go with it, whatever. Of course, the election happened. Old guard was voted out. New guard was voted in. And along the way, this particular file was dropped somewhere, somehow. We don't know what happened. We're hoping that we'll find out. We're hoping that we'll be able to ask the right questions to the right people and figure out what happened. It may be a matter of, there's a new city manager brought in, and this was not on their desk when they took over. When they walked in on day one, this was not on the inbox of things to do. Why was that? We don't know. But that deserves an investigation. I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't know if people being fired is the solution. Maybe just more checks and balances to the system. It's a good thing to be following up on, and we'd like to do that. But to make this bold accusation of let's just go and find somebody to fire, reeks of either A, you're trying to stir a pot that shouldn't be stirred. Two, rank amateurism, because anybody could have said, well, this is the wrong guy to fire. It's like you're trying to find a scapegoat for a story.
It's like, and sure, the city clerk is in charge of the kind of the agenda of council meetings, of what goes onto the agenda. So if something's been put down for follow-up at a future meeting, that falls to the city clerk. But there's so many more other things that come into that before it gets to the point of drafting the agenda for an individual meeting, and which is a departmental level, and which does fall under the ultimate purview of the city manager, not the clerk. I'm not calling for the firing of the city manager either. I don't think any of us know enough. And calling for people's firing is such a... it satisfies an urge for vengeance when people are frustrated with something that they don't like. Yeah. But so many good people get fired because of something that they did that was absolutely wrong. But then you end up with a worse person taking their place. And it's like, Kevin Ardoon's a decent city clerk, as far as I can see. He seems to very much be involved in his enthusiastic about his job. While I have all kinds of problems with the advisory committee system that exists in cities in Ontario, the reviews that he's recently announced to the advisory committee system, although it is still the old system with which I have a huge problem, is a massive improvement procedurally in clarity and openness and rigor of appointments. It's frankly embarrassing that nothing like that existed before, but he's absolutely put the right things in place to make the current poor system more defensible than it was. So congratulations to him on that. And for that alone, I would say he's a step ahead of some other clerks that have held that office over the years.
Yeah, it's just, you don't throw around. If you're gonna have a platform like a platform like this one, a podcast or an online newspaper platform, throwing around accusations of this person should be fired is just so without really understanding what were the details. This, like, don't make this into a scandal when there isn't one there. We don't know. We don't know. We're hoping to get the details come forward, but to all of a sudden just point fingers at somebody and say, we need to fire them. Why? Why?
It's too easy.
Why would you throw a guy's reputation under the bus to get some clicks?
When he wasn't even in the city when the problem presumably was developing.
He was in Halifax. he worked in the city of Halifax at the time that this decision was brought forward. So to say, well, that's he's got to go. It's like, well, no, he had to find out where Burlington was on the map at the time.
Kevin, if you're listening, this is what's called a Burlington welcome.
Oh my God! It's just irresponsible to go call for a guy's firing, but we don't know what happened. We don't know definitively who was responsible.
No, I mean, not yet. So, and even then, unless it's really egregious, and it's so. For us sitting outside, there's so many things that don't get reported on that add entirely different context to these stories, well, time will tell, I guess, in the bigger issue, and we do obviously hope to have a full episode on that story because it is an important one. So watch this space. Well, so last up on our agenda for today is some subsidized housing and what seems to be a genuinely good news story in Halton.
Yeah. Well, it appears that Halton Region Council is voting to move ahead on 4 new site projects for that will be subsidized social assisted housing in Georgetown, Oakville, and Milton, which is fantastic because this is something we have been. It's good to hear that the council, Halton Regional Council, is listening to the 905er podcast because we've been cheering, we've been arguing for more social assisted, socialized housing since almost I'd argue since day one of this podcast. So I'm glad that we're finally being heard in the upper echelons of power. But joking aside, this is good news, and kudos to the region for making this happen because. We need to hear more of these stories, especially in light of the runaway housing prices that are all over the region. We need more, not just in Halton, but all over the 905. More stories like this. I hope it encourages more regions to invest in things like this.
Yeah, I mean, let's just go through some of the details here. So 16 units in Georgetown, another big development in Oakville, Margaret Drive, Allendale campus in Milton. Ultimately, they're looking at something like 505 residential units. So, I mean, 505 is that's a lot. That's a big development. So often when you see these announcements of affordable housing or subsidized housing, it's 5 units. And you're like, seriously? It's like a drop in the ocean. 505 residential units seems like more than a drop in the ocean, and then 40 more on Kerr Street in Oakville. So this is great. This is the kind of investment that needs to happen. This is subsidized housing, which is a different kind of category to affordable housing. Affordable is a notoriously difficult phrase to define. Subsidized housing is for people who cannot afford to pay their entire rent or any of their rent or whatever. And it's the fact that this falls under regional remit, I think is somewhat of a problem for those parts of the 905 that have two-tier governments. So in Hamilton doesn't, but because no one pays attention to what the region does as a rule. There's almost no political pressure on the region. I mean, I think they're hearing the calls that are being heard at every level of government for more affordable housing. And so certainly, I'm not saying that they're deaf to these issues, but there's a real kind of democratic deficit in the regional governments. And you may actually remember that Patrick Brown, before he ran for Brampton mayor, was going to run to be chair of Peel Region because for the first time it was going to be an elected position. So this is a multi-billion-dollar political role in Ontario that is an appointee. And Doug Ford cancelled the election for the Peel and went back to the appointment system, which Halton also used to have an appointment system rather than elections. Although we have elections now, no one pays any attention to them really, and it's
well, that's it.
It's a problem. I mean, it's one of the things I hope maybe we can address a little bit through this podcast.
But I mean, if Halton Region wants to make itself more well known in the lives of Halton residents, this would be one of the. This is a huge part where Halton Region can work to build more housing, affordable housing that will help bring down the cost. House price economics are very complicated. I'm not going to purport to be an expert on them. But the people that we have talked to about this have all said it's a matter of supply. We need more supply. Socialized and subsidized housing. It's not the cure-all, but it definitely goes a long way to helping kind of stabilize the market. That we putting more inventory on the market at affordable pricing for people to get into. If we do a little bit more of this amongst other options that are out there, this can go a long way to help just kind of, I don't know, we'll bring housing prices down, but at least just maybe plateauing them a bit. So it's a little bit more reasonable for people to budget on.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling is that ultimately the municipalities at whatever level need to get into the housing market properly. Like subsidized housing is not the housing market. It's filling a societal need. And it's just 100% cost to the region, pretty much. The idea of municipalities becoming major landlords of well-maintained affordable housing, as they are in other parts of the world, is just at the very earliest stages of being thought about in Canada. And I think ultimately that's going to be the way it's done. If we want homes fit, to use that phrase that was used after the Second World War in Britain, homes fit for heroes, homes fit for nurses and truck drivers and food processors and working class people who've carried us through COVID.
Homes fit for the frontline heroes.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that's really maybe an old phrase that could be brought back into commission, that those people who kept the lights on when we all stayed home for 6 months, the least we could do is provide decent housing, just like Europe did after the Second World War. So, I mean, again, I'm saying like we can snap our fingers and make this happen. I wish, perhaps we can start to put it on the agenda as something the municipalities think about, and it's not just throwing tax at a problem and an expenditure. A municipality that is a landlord is making money as a landlord, like any other landlord would. It just so happens that it will concentrate on affordable housing rather than the higher cost forms of housing.
Yeah, I'm going to say let's leave it at that for this episode. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Be sure you listen, like, subscribe, share, spread the word far and wide, because we have 2 more episodes or 2 more interviews that we're going to have planned before we take a break for the new year and whatnot. Thanks very much, everyone, for listening, and we'll talk with you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.
Looking to make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.